Most families pass down recipes. Mine passes down lawsuits. I'm Elliott Parish, 38 years old, and I run Parish Electric with the kind of precision that keeps the lights on in half this city. My grandfather started this company with a toolbox and a handshake. My father expanded it into a $1 million operation. Now it's my turn to keep the current flowing, even when everything else in my life seems to be shorting out. The first sign something was wrong came on a Tuesday morning in March. Margot, my wife of 15 years, stood at our kitchen island folding clothes into her travel suitcase. Nothing unusual there. She'd been taking more business trips lately, conferences for her marketing consulting work. But as I poured my coffee, I noticed something that made my hand pause mid-pour. Silk lingerie. The expensive kind she usually saved for anniversaries and special occasions. Black lace, red satin, pieces I hadn't seen her wear in months. All going into a suitcase for what she'd told me was a solo business trip to Chicago. Planning to impress the conference attendees? I asked, keeping my voice light. She didn't look up. A woman should always feel confident in what she wears underneath. You wouldn't understand. That stung, but I let it slide. Margot had been distant lately, wrapped up in her own world of client calls and networking events. Our daughters, Becca and Lynn, both teenagers now, had started asking why Mom was never home for dinner anymore. I'd been making excuses, covering for her absence, telling myself she was just focused on growing her business. But lingerie for a solo trip? That felt like a circuit with too much current running through it. I kissed her goodbye and headed to the Parish Electric headquarters, a converted warehouse on the industrial side of town. The building might not look like much from the outside, but inside it hummed with the organized chaos of a successful operation. Trucks loading equipment, dispatchers coordinating jobs, electricians grabbing coffee before heading out to wire another piece of this city's infrastructure. My assistant Joanne greeted me with her usual sharp smile and a stack of messages. She's been with the company for 12 years, knows where every metaphorical body is buried, and has the kind of loyalty you can't buy. Your brother Tom called 3 times, she said, handing me the pink slips. Something about the Henderson project timeline. Tom Parish, my younger brother by 3 years, serves as our operations manager. He's good at his job, but he's always had this itch to be in charge, to prove he deserves more than his current position. Family businesses are breeding grounds for that kind of resentment. What's his complaint this time? I asked, settling into my office chair. Same as always. He thinks he should have final approval on project scheduling instead of running it through you first. I rubbed my temples. Between Margot's strange behavior and Tom's constant power plays, I felt like I was troubleshooting problems on multiple circuits simultaneously. My phone buzzed with a text from Margot. Flight delayed, might not be able to call tonight. Love you. Something about that message felt off. Not the words themselves, but the timing. Her flight wasn't supposed to leave until evening, and it was barely 9 a.m. Why would she know about delays already? I opened my laptop and pulled up our joint credit card account. Call it paranoia, but 15 years of marriage teaches you to pay attention to patterns. What I found made my coffee taste bitter. Hotel charges. Not just for Chicago, but for Denver in February, Atlanta in January, Phoenix in December. All cities where Margot had claimed to attend conferences. But here's what caught my attention. Each hotel charge was duplicated. 2 rooms, same dates, same hotels. When I'd asked about the double charges before, she'd explained them as booking errors that got corrected later. Except looking at the statements now, I could see both charges had cleared. No corrections, no refunds. I picked up my phone and called the Marriott in Denver. After some gentle persuasion and a story about needing records for tax purposes, the desk clerk confirmed what I'd started to suspect. 2 rooms, registered under different names, but linked in their system as traveling together. The second name was Thornton Blake. I knew that name. Thornton worked for Morrison Construction, one of our biggest clients. He was their senior project manager, the guy I coordinated with on major electrical installations. 42 years old, married to a woman named Jill, known around the industry for his smooth talking and what people politely called his mentoring of young female professionals. My hands started shaking as I scrolled through more credit card statements. Restaurant charges that matched his expense reports, Uber rides to the same addresses, a pattern going back 6 months, maybe longer. Joanne knocked on my door. Elliot, you okay? You look like you've been struck by lightning. I'm fine, I lied, just reviewing some accounts. But I wasn't fine. I was the kind of angry that builds slowly, like an electrical charge accumulating before it arcs across a gap, the kind that makes you think very carefully about your next move. I spent the rest of the day acting normal, handling routine business, approving work orders, reviewing bids, but underneath, my mind was racing through possibilities, calculating my options like I was designing a complex electrical system. That evening, after Becca and Lynn had gone to their rooms, I sat in my home office and did something I never thought I'd do. I hacked into Margot's laptop. It wasn't really hacking. I knew her passwords, had helped her set up most of her accounts over the years, but it felt like a violation anyway, like cutting into a live wire without knowing what you'd find on the other side. Her email told the story I'd been dreading, messages from Thornton going back 8 months, not explicit, but intimate in a way that made my stomach clench. References to our special time together, and can't wait to see you again, and next month's conference should be perfect. The most recent exchange was from yesterday. Thornton. Looking forward to Chicago. I've upgraded us to a suite. Margot. Perfect. Elliot suspects nothing. He's too wrapped up in work to pay attention. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark for a long time, listening to the house settle around me. Upstairs, my daughters were probably doing homework or texting friends, living their teenage lives without knowing their family was about to implode. Most men in my situation would confront their wives immediately, demand explanations, threaten divorce. But I'm an electrician, and electricians think systematically. We trace circuits, identify problems, and fix them methodically. I wasn't ready to flip the main breaker yet. First, I wanted to understand the full scope of the problem. I opened my laptop and booked a flight to Chicago under my mother's maiden name, Morrison, seat 7B, right next to where Thornton Blake would be sitting in 7A according to the flight information I'd found in Margot's email. Sometimes the best way to test a circuit is to run some current through it and see what happens. The next morning, I woke up before dawn and drove to the office. I needed to clear my schedule without raising suspicions, and I had some research to do. Joanne arrived at 7:30 to find me already deep in paperwork, rearranging project timelines and delegating responsibilities. "Going somewhere?" she asked, noting the unusual activity. "Chicago," I said. "Last-minute business trip. Can you handle things here for a couple days?" She nodded, but I caught the questioning look in her eyes. Joanne knows my schedule better than I do, and she knew I didn't have any Chicago business planned. "Elliot," she said carefully, "is everything okay at home?" That's the thing about working with someone for 12 years. They can read your moods like an electrical schematic. "Define okay," I said, not looking up from my computer. She didn't push, just brought me coffee and started making calls to reschedule my appointments. That's why I value her so much. She knows when to ask questions and when to just make things work. I spent the morning digging deeper into Thornton Blake's background. Professional networking sites, company directories, social media profiles. What I found painted a picture of a man who'd built his career on charm and connections, someone who knew how to work a room and make people feel special. His LinkedIn profile was full of photos from industry events, always with attractive women from various companies. His arm around their shoulders, big smile, looking like everyone's favorite mentor. The comments on his posts were telling too. Lots of heart emojis and great meeting you messages from women in the construction and engineering fields. I also found something interesting in the Morrison Construction Employee Directory. Thornton had been moved between departments 3 times in the past 5 years. Each transfer came with a promotion, which looked good on paper, but I'd seen this pattern before. Companies often promote problematic employees sideways to avoid dealing with complaints. My phone rang. Margot's name appeared on the screen. "Hi, honey," she said, her voice bright and cheerful. "Just wanted to let you know I'm heading to the airport soon." "Have a good trip," I said. "What's the name of your conference again?" A pause. Just half a second, but I caught it. "Midwest Marketing Summit," she said. "I told you about it last week." I'd already checked. No such conference was scheduled in Chicago this week. "Right," I said. "Well, learn something useful." After she hung up, I called my sister Connie. She works in corporate law downtown, specializes in employment issues. If anyone would know about Thornton Blake's reputation, it would be her. "Elliot," she answered on the second ring. "What's up, big brother?" "I need some information about someone. Thornton Blake at Morrison Construction. Anything you might have heard through the legal grapevine." "Thornton Blake?" she repeated, and I heard typing in the background. "Why are you asking about him?" "Professional curiosity." "Uh-huh." More typing. "Well, your professional curiosity is about to get very interesting. I can't give you specifics because of client confidentiality, but let's just say Morrison's HR department has had some expensive conversations about Mr. Blake's mentoring style." My grip tightened on the phone. "What kind of conversations?" "The kind that end with settlement agreements and non-disclosure clauses. 2 that I know of, possibly more. The man has a pattern, Elliot. Young women, career guidance, hotel rooms, and then suddenly these women either transfer departments or leave the company entirely." Has anyone filed formal complaints? That's where it gets interesting. Complaints were filed, but they seem to disappear into HR limbo. Someone high up has been protecting him. I thanked Connie and hung up, my mind racing. This wasn't just about my marriage anymore. Thornton Blake was a predator, and somehow my wife had gotten caught in his web. Or maybe she'd walked into it willingly. That possibility hurt worse than anything. I drove home to pack a bag, keeping my movements casual in case Margot had asked the neighbors to keep an eye on things. As I threw clothes into a suitcase, I found myself standing in our bedroom, looking at the framed photos on Margot's dresser. Our wedding day, family vacations, the girls' school events, 15 years of shared history, and now it felt like I'd been living with a stranger. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Parish, this is Jill Blake, Thornton's wife. We need to talk. I think our spouses are having an affair. I stared at the message for a long moment, so I wasn't the only one who'd figured it out. I texted back, "What makes you think that?" Her response came immediately. Hotel receipts, phone records, and a woman's earring in his car that isn't mine. Plus, he's been acting strange for months. Secretive, defensive, always checking his phone. "I'm flying to Chicago tonight," I typed. "Same flight as them." "Be careful," she replied. "Thornton can be charming, but he's also ruthless when cornered." I finished packing and drove to the airport, my mind running through scenarios like an electrician troubleshooting a complex system. I had evidence of the affair, but I wanted more. I wanted to understand how deep this went, how long it had been happening, and most importantly, I wanted both of them to face consequences. At the airport, I checked in under my alias and made my way to the gate. The flight was crowded, business travelers and tourists mixing in the usual airport chaos. I found a seat where I could watch the boarding area and waited. Thornton Blake arrived first. I recognized him from his LinkedIn photos, tall, silver-haired, wearing an expensive suit and carrying a leather briefcase. He had the kind of confident stride that suggested he owned whatever room he walked into. Margot appeared 10 minutes later, and my chest tightened. She looked beautiful, dressed in a way that seemed calculated to impress. Her hair was styled differently than usual, and she was wearing makeup with more care than she'd shown in months. They didn't acknowledge each other, but I could see the subtle glances, the way they positioned themselves to have sightlines to each other. They'd done this before, practiced the art of traveling together while appearing to be strangers. When boarding began, I waited until they'd found their seats before making my way down the aisle. Thornton was in 7A, just as I'd expected. I slid into 7B with my carry-on bag, settling in like any other business traveler. He glanced at me with polite disinterest, then went back to his phone. I could see him texting, his fingers moving quickly across the screen. I waited until we were taxiing toward the runway, then turned to him with a friendly smile. "Business trip?" I asked. "Yeah," he replied without looking up. "You?" "Same. I'm in electrical contracting. Elliott Parish, Parish Electric." Now I had his attention. He knew that name. We'd worked together on dozens of projects over the years. His face went through a series of expressions as recognition dawned, followed quickly by confusion and then something that might have been panic. "Elliot," he said slowly, "what are you doing on this flight?" I leaned closer, keeping my voice conversational but letting him hear the steel underneath. "Well, Thornton, that's an interesting question. See, my wife told me she was taking a solo business trip to Chicago. Packed some very nice lingerie for this solo trip, which seemed odd. So I did a little research, found some interesting patterns in our credit card statements, and discovered that you and she have been traveling together for months." His coffee cup was halfway to his lips when I continued. "So my question for you is this. Where exactly are you and my wife staying in Chicago?" The coffee went everywhere, across his shirt, his laptop, the tray table, splashing onto the passenger in front of us. He jerked backward, cursing under his breath, grabbing for napkins while coffee dripped onto the floor. "I'm sorry. What?" he stammered, trying to clean up the mess. "I think you heard me clearly," I said, my voice still calm and friendly. "You've been having an affair with my wife. I have hotel receipts, credit card statements, and a very interesting email thread between you two, so I'll ask again, where are you staying?" The passengers around us were starting to notice the commotion. Thornton's face had gone pale, and he kept glancing toward the back of the plane where Margot was sitting. My phone buzzed with a text from Margot. "Why is Thornton texting me that you're on the plane? Elliot, what's going on?" I showed Thornton the message. "Looks like she's wondering the same thing." "Listen," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "This isn't what you think." "Really? Because what I think is that you've been manipulating my wife into an affair, probably the same way you've manipulated other women at your company. I think you saw an opportunity with a lonely housewife and decided to add her to your collection. His eyes widened. He hadn't expected me to know about his history. How did you? I'm very thorough when I'm troubleshooting a problem, I said. And you, Thornton, are definitely a problem that needs solving. The flight attendant appeared, concerned about the coffee spill. While Thornton dealt with getting cleaned up, I sent a text to Jill Blake. Confronted him on the plane. He's rattled. Time to coordinate our next moves. Her response was immediate. I've already contacted Morrison Construction's HR department, and I may have shared some interesting information with a few key people in the industry. I smiled, feeling the first spark of satisfaction I'd had in days. Thornton Blake was about to discover that his carefully constructed world was about to short-circuit in a very public way. The plane leveled off at cruising altitude, but the real turbulence was just beginning. By the time we landed in Chicago, Thornton Blake looked like a man who'd stuck his finger in an electrical socket. His shirt was stained with coffee, his hand shook slightly as he gathered his belongings, and he kept glancing around like he expected security to arrest him at any moment. I took my time deplaning, watching as he hurried through the terminal. Margot had texted me 6 times during the flight, each message more frantic than the last. Elliot, please call me. I can explain everything. This isn't what it looks like. Where are you staying? We need to talk. Elliot, please. I didn't respond to any of them. Let her wonder. Let her panic. She'd spent months planning secret trips with her lover while lying to my face. She could spend a few hours wondering what I knew and what I planned to do about it. Instead, I called Jill Blake from the airport. How did it go? She asked immediately. He spilled coffee all over himself when I asked where he and my wife were staying, I said. I think it's safe to say he wasn't expecting to see me. Good. I've been busy on this end. Morrison Construction's HR director, Linda Lindell, is a friend of mine from college. When I told her what I suspected about Thornton and showed her some evidence, she went very quiet. What kind of quiet? The kind that suggests she already knew there were problems but couldn't act without proof. Turns out, they've been looking for a reason to deal with Thornton for a while. His pattern of behavior has been creating liability issues. I found a quiet corner of the airport and sat down. What did you tell her? Everything. The hotel receipts, the matched travel dates, the suspicious expenses. She's opening an internal investigation immediately. And Morrison's relationship with Parish Electric. That's the beautiful part. Linda assured me this won't affect your company's contracts. In fact, they're more concerned about the legal exposure Thornton has created. They want this handled quietly and quickly. I felt a grim satisfaction. Thornton had thought he was untouchable, protected by his position and his charm. He was about to learn otherwise. I took a taxi to downtown Chicago and checked into a hotel 3 blocks from where Margot and Thornton were staying. I'd found their reservation in Margot's email, the Palmer House, a suite on the 15th floor, charged to Morrison Construction's corporate account, which meant Thornton was using company funds for his affair. That was another piece of ammunition for the growing case against him. My phone rang, Margot's name on the screen. Elliot, thank goodness. Where are you? Chicago, I said simply. I know you're in Chicago. I mean, where are you staying? We need to talk face to face. I'm sure we do. But first, I have a question for you, Margot. How long have you been having an affair with Thornton Blake? Silence. Long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. Elliot, how long? It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. I have hotel receipts, credit card statements, emails, and text messages. I know about Denver, Atlanta, Phoenix, and now Chicago. I know about the lingerie, the lies about conferences, and the way you've been treating me like an idiot for months. I could hear her crying on the other end of the line. I never meant for this to happen, she said. But it did happen. Repeatedly. For months. While I was home taking care of our daughters, covering for your absences, making excuses for why you were never around anymore. The girls... Don't. My voice went sharp. Don't you dare bring up Becca and Lynn. You made your choices without thinking about them. Elliot, please. Can we meet somewhere? I can explain. There's nothing to explain. You've been having an affair. You've been lying to me and to our daughters. You've been using our joint credit card to pay for hotel rooms where you cheat on your family. I hung up and immediately called my lawyer, David Morrison. Different Morrison, no relation to the construction company. He'd handled our will and some business contracts over the years. Elliot, this is unexpected. What can I do for you? I need to discuss divorce proceedings and asset protection, I said. My wife has been having an affair, and I want to make sure my daughter's interests are protected. I see. How much evidence do you have? I spent 20 minutes walking him through everything I'd discovered: the hotel receipts, the credit card charges, the emails, the coordinated travel schedules. "This is very thorough," David said when I finished. "With this level of documentation, we can definitely protect your interests and ensure your daughter's financial security. Illinois is a no-fault divorce state, but adultery can still influence asset division and custody arrangements." "I want her to face consequences," I said. "Real consequences. Not just a slap on the wrist." "We can make sure she understands the gravity of her choices," David agreed. "I'll start preparing the paperwork." After hanging up with David, I decided to take a walk through downtown Chicago. I needed to think, to plan my next moves carefully. This wasn't just about ending my marriage anymore. It was about making sure Thornton Blake faced consequences for his pattern of behavior and ensuring that Margot understood she couldn't destroy our family without facing the fallout. I found myself standing outside the Palmer house, looking up at the 15th floor. Somewhere up there, my wife was probably trying to salvage her secret relationship while figuring out how much trouble she was in. My phone buzzed with a text from Joanne. "Tom's been asking questions about where you went. Should I tell him anything?" I typed back, "Tell him it's personal business. I'll be back tomorrow." Another text, this one from Jill Blake. "Thornton just called me. He's panicking, wants to explain everything. I told him to explain it to Morrison's HR department instead." I smiled. Jill Blake was turning out to be a valuable ally in this situation. She had every right to be furious with her husband, and she was channeling that anger in productive directions. A third text came in, this one from an unknown number. "Mr. Parish, this is Linda Lindell from Morrison Construction. Could we schedule a call? I have some questions about Thornton Blake's conduct that might interest you." Things were moving faster than I'd expected. Thornton's world was unraveling in real time, and he was probably just starting to understand how much trouble he was in. I walked back to my hotel and called Linda Lindell. "Mr. Parish, thank you for calling. Jill Blake shared some concerning information with me today, and I've been reviewing Mr. Blake's employment record. What did you find?" "A pattern of behavior that should have been addressed long ago. Expense reports that don't quite add up, complaints that were filed but not properly investigated, and what appears to be a systematic abuse of his position." "What kind of complaints?" "Harassment, primarily. 3 formal complaints in the past 2 years, all involving young women in our company. Each complaint was investigated by Thornton's supervisor, who happens to be his golf buddy, and each was dismissed as miscommunication or personality conflicts." My jaw tightened. "So he's been protected?" "It appears so. But that protection ends now. Using company funds to conduct an extramarital affair is grounds for immediate termination, and the harassment complaints give us additional cause." "What about Morrison's contracts with Parish Electric?" "Completely separate issue. Your company provides excellent service, and we value our relationship. This is about one employee's misconduct, nothing more." After ending the call, I sat in my hotel room and thought about Margot. How had she gotten involved with someone like Thornton? Had he targeted her specifically, or had she been a willing participant from the beginning? Either way, she'd made choices that were about to have serious consequences. For her, for Thornton, and unfortunately for our daughters. My phone rang again. This time it was Tom, my brother. "Elliot, where the heck are you? Joanne says you're on some mysterious personal trip, but the Henderson project needs your approval, and the client is getting impatient." "Handle it," I said. "You're operations manager. Make the decision." "I don't have authorization for changes over $50,000. "Then don't make changes over $50,000. "Elliot, what's going on? This isn't like you to just disappear." I considered telling him the truth, but Tom had never been good at keeping secrets, and right now I needed to control the flow of information. "Personal emergency," I said. "I'll be back tomorrow. If you can't handle things for one day, maybe we need to reconsider your role." That shut him up. Tom might resent my authority, but he wasn't ready to push a direct confrontation. I ordered room service and spent the evening reviewing everything I knew, planning my next steps like I was designing an electrical system. Every circuit needed to be properly planned, every connection tested, every potential failure point identified. By morning, I decided on my approach. Margot and Thornton thought they were dealing with a betrayed husband who would either forgive quietly or rage impotently. They were about to discover they'd underestimated the situation entirely. I wasn't just angry, I was methodical, and I was just getting started. I woke up at 6 a.m. Chicago time and immediately checked my phone. 17 missed calls from Margot, 12 text messages, and 3 voicemails. Her desperation was escalating. The voicemails told the story. "Elliot, please call me back. I know you're upset, but we can work through this. I've been trying to reach you all night. Thornton says you threatened him on the plane. That's not like you. Elliot, I'm scared. Please just talk to me. I made a mistake, but I love you. I love our family. Too little, too late. I showered, dressed, and went downstairs for breakfast. The hotel restaurant was busy with business travelers, everyone focused on their phones and laptops, conducting the morning rituals of corporate America. My phone rang. Jill Blake. Elliot, we have a problem. Thornton came home last night. I thought he was staying in Chicago. He was supposed to. But after your confrontation on the plane, he changed his flight and came home. He's been ranting about you all night, making threats. I set down my coffee cup. What kind of threats? He says you ambushed him, that you're trying to destroy his career over a misunderstanding. He's talking about suing you for harassment and defamation. Let him try. I have documentation for everything I've said. That's not what worries me. What worries me is that he's desperate, and desperate people do stupid things. He knows his job is in jeopardy, his marriage is over, and his reputation is about to be destroyed. He might try to retaliate. She was right to be concerned. I'd seen men in similar situations before, cornered, facing the loss of everything they'd built, lashing out at whoever they blamed for their problems. What are you going to do? I asked. I've already filed for divorce. My lawyer served him with papers an hour ago. I'm staying at my sister's house until this settles down. Smart woman. She was protecting herself while the situation played out. And Morrison Construction? Linda Lindell called me this morning. They're conducting a formal investigation, but Thornton has been suspended pending the outcome. His access to company systems has been revoked, and his corporate credit card has been canceled. I felt a grim satisfaction. Thornton Blake was discovering that his carefully constructed world could collapse very quickly when the right pressure was applied. What about the women who filed complaints against him? Linda's reaching out to them. With Thornton suspended, they might be willing to provide more details about what happened. After hanging up with Jill, I called David Morrison, my lawyer. Elliot, I've been reviewing the evidence you provided yesterday. This is a very strong case, but I'm concerned about something. What? Your wife's lover works for one of your biggest clients. This situation could get complicated if he decides to retaliate professionally. Morrison Construction is handling that internally. They're more concerned about liability than protecting Thornton. Good, but I'd recommend documenting everything carefully. If this turns into a public battle, you want to make sure you're seen as the wronged party, not the aggressor. He was right. I needed to be strategic about how this played out. I spent the morning making calls, building my case methodically. I contacted the hotels where Margot and Thornton had stayed, requesting detailed records. I pulled credit card statements going back a full year. I even hired a private investigator in Chicago to document their current trip. By noon, I had a comprehensive file that told the story of their affair in painful detail. 8 months of deception, thousands of dollars in expenses, and a pattern of lies that would be impossible for Margot to explain away. My phone rang. Margot again. Elliot, please. I've been trying to reach you for hours. I've been busy, I said. Thornton left. He flew back home last night. He's scared about his job. He should be scared. His company is investigating him for harassment and misuse of corporate funds. What did you do? I told the truth, something you might want to try. Elliot, I know I made mistakes. Mistakes? I couldn't keep the anger out of my voice anymore. Margot, you've been having an affair for 8 months. You've been lying to me, to our daughters, to everyone. You've been using our joint credit card to pay for hotel rooms where you cheat on your family. These weren't mistakes. These were choices. I never meant to hurt you. But you did hurt me. You hurt Becca and Lynn too, even if they don't know it yet. You destroyed our marriage for what? Some excitement? Some attention from a man who's been harassing women for years? Silence. Did you know about the other women, Margot? Did you know that Thornton has a pattern of targeting women, manipulating them, using his position to pressure them into relationships? That's not true. It is true. I have documentation. 3 formal harassment complaints in 2 years, all covered up by his supervisors. You weren't special, Margot. You were just another conquest for a predator. I could hear her crying, but I felt no sympathy. She'd made her choices with full knowledge of what she was risking. What happens now? She asked. Now you face the consequences. I've filed for divorce, I'm seeking full custody of the girls, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly why our marriage ended. Elliot, please don't involve Becca and Lynn in this. You involved them the moment you started lying to them about where you were going and who you were with. You involved them when you chose your affair over your family. I hung up and immediately called home. Lynn answered on the third ring. Dad? Where are you? Mom's been acting weird, and she left for Chicago without saying goodbye properly. My heart clenched. My daughters deserve better than this. I'm in Chicago too, sweetheart, on business. I'll be home tonight. Is everything okay? You and Mom have been acting strange lately. We'll talk when I get home, okay? Is Becca there? She's at soccer practice. Dad, are you and Mom having problems? 17 years old, and she was already picking up on the tension. Kids always know more than adults think they do. We'll discuss everything tonight, I said. I love you, Lynn. I love you too, Dad. After hanging up, I booked a flight home and called my private investigator. Mr. Parish, I have some interesting information for you. What did you find? Your wife and Mr. Blake checked into the Palmer house yesterday as planned, but Blake checked out last night around 11 p.m. Your wife is still there, but she's been making a lot of phone calls and seems very agitated. Any idea who she's been calling? Based on her body language and the length of the conversations, I'd guess she's been trying to reach you and probably talking to family or friends. She's clearly in crisis mode. Keep monitoring the situation until I get there. Will do? I spent the flight home thinking about how to handle the conversation with my daughters. They deserve to know the truth, but they also deserve to be protected from the ugliest details of their mother's betrayal. When I landed, I found a message from Tom waiting for me. Elliot, we need to talk. Something's going on with the Morrison construction account. Their HR department called asking questions about our billing practices. What the heck is happening? I called him back immediately. Tom, don't panic. Morrison is dealing with an internal personnel issue that doesn't affect our contracts. What kind of personnel issue? The kind that involves their senior project manager being investigated for misconduct. Thornton Blake? What does that have to do with us? I paused, considering how much to tell him. Tom would find out eventually anyway. Thornton has been having an affair with Margot. Morrison's investigating him for harassment and misuse of company funds. Silence. Then, holy cow, Elliot, are you serious? Completely serious. And before you ask, yes, I'm filing for divorce. What can I do to help? That surprised me. Tom and I had our professional disagreements, but when it came to family, he always stepped up. Keep Parish Electric running smoothly while I deal with this mess. And don't discuss it with anyone outside the family. Of course. Elliot, I'm sorry. I know this has to be incredibly difficult. Thanks, Tom. I appreciate it. By the time I got home, it was after 9 p.m. The house was quiet. Becca and Lynn had apparently gone to their rooms. I found a note from Becca on the kitchen counter. Dad, we ordered pizza. Yours is in the fridge. Mom called and said she's staying in Chicago an extra day. What's going on? I climbed the stairs and knocked on Lynn's door. Come in. She was sitting at her desk, supposedly doing homework, but I could tell she'd been worried. Dad, what's happening? Mom sounded really upset when she called, and you've both been acting strange for weeks. I sat on her bed and tried to find the right words. Your mother and I are having serious problems, I said. We're probably going to get divorced. Her face crumpled. Is it because of something Becca and I did? No, sweetheart. This has nothing to do with you or your sister. This is about choices your mother made that hurt our family. What kind of choices? I chose my words carefully. She's been having a relationship with someone else, someone she works with. Lynn stared at me for a long moment. At 17, she was old enough to understand what that meant. She's been cheating on you? Yes. For how long? Several months. Tears started flowing down her cheeks. I knew something was wrong. She's been gone so much, and when she is here, she seems like she's thinking about something else. I moved to her desk chair and pulled her into a hug. I'm sorry, Lynn. I'm sorry you have to deal with this. What's going to happen to us? You and Becca will always be my priority. No matter what happens between your mother and me, that won't change. We talked for another hour, and then I had a similar conversation with Becca. Both girls were hurt and angry, but they were also resilient. They'd get through this. As I finally settled into bed, alone, my phone buzzed with one last message from Margot. I'm coming home tomorrow. We need to talk. I typed back, talk to my lawyer. The real confrontation was still ahead, but I was ready for it. I'd spent 2 days building my case, documenting everything, and preparing for whatever came next. Margot thought she could come home and somehow salvage the situation. She was about to discover just how wrong she was. Margot came home the next afternoon while the girls were at school. I heard her car in the driveway and watched from my office window as she sat behind the wheel for several minutes, gathering courage for the conversation she knew was coming. When she finally came inside, she looked exhausted. Her usual polished appearance was gone. No makeup, hair pulled back carelessly, wearing clothes that looked like she'd slept in them. "Elliot," she called from the hallway, "in here." She appeared in the doorway of my office, and for a moment neither of us spoke. 15 years of marriage, and it had come to this. Two strangers staring at each other across a gulf of betrayal and broken trust. "Can we talk?" she asked. "That depends. Are you planning to tell me the truth or more lies?" She flinched. "I deserve that." "You deserve a lot worse than that." She sat down in the chair across from my desk, the same chair where we used to discuss family finances and vacation plans. Now it felt like an interrogation room. "Elliot, I know I've hurt you." "Stop." I held up my hand. "Before you say anything else, you should know that I have complete documentation of your affair. Hotel receipts, credit card statements, emails, text messages, travel records. I know about Denver, Atlanta, Phoenix, and Chicago. I know about the lies you told our daughters about where you were going. I know about the lingerie you packed for your solo business trips." Her face went pale. "I also know about Thornton Blake's history of harassing women at Morrison Construction. 3 formal complaints in 2 years, all covered up by his supervisors. You weren't his first victim, Margot, and you probably wouldn't have been his last." "Victim?" she said sharply. "I'm not a victim. I made my own choices." "Did you, or did he manipulate you the same way he manipulated the other women? Started with professional mentoring, made you feel special, gradually escalated the relationship until you were in too deep to back out?" She was quiet for a long moment. "It wasn't like that," she said finally. "Then what was it like?" "I was lonely, Elliot. You're always working, always focused on the business. We barely talked anymore, barely spent time together. Thornton paid attention to me. He made me feel interesting, attractive, valued. So you decided to have an affair. I didn't plan it, it just happened." "Nothing just happens, Margot. You made choices. You chose to meet him for drinks. You chose to go to his hotel room. You chose to lie to me and to our daughters for 8 months." Tears started flowing down her cheeks, but I felt no sympathy. I'd used up all my sympathy during the sleepless nights when I'd wondered what I'd done wrong, how I'd failed as a husband. "What do you want me to say?" she asked. "I want you to tell me why you thought you could destroy our family and face no consequences." "I never wanted to destroy our family." "But you did. The moment you started lying to Becca and Lynn about where you were going, you involved them in your deception. The moment you used our joint credit card to pay for hotel rooms with your lover, you stole from our family to fund your affair." She was crying harder now, but I wasn't finished. "Do you know what Thornton said when I confronted him on the plane? Nothing. He spilled coffee all over himself and looked like he wanted to disappear. That's the man you threw away your marriage for. A coward who couldn't even face the consequences of his actions." "Where is he now?" she asked quietly. "Suspended from his job pending an investigation. His wife filed for divorce. His access to company systems has been revoked. The women he harassed are finally being taken seriously because his supervisors can't protect him anymore." Her eyes widened. "You destroyed his career." "I didn't destroy anything. I told the truth. The truth destroyed his career." "Elliot, please. I know I made mistakes, but we can work through this. We can go to counseling, rebuild our trust." "No." The finality in my voice seemed to shock her. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean, I'm done. I've filed for divorce. I'm seeking full custody of the girls. I want you out of this house. You can't take my daughters away from me. Watch me. I have documentation of 8 months of lies and deception. I can show that you prioritized your affair over your family responsibilities. I can demonstrate that you used family resources to fund your cheating." "Elliot, please, I'm not finished. I've also contacted several people in our social circle and shared some interesting information about your activities. Your book club friends were particularly interested to learn where you've really been spending your time." Her face went white. "You didn't." "I did. I figure if you're proud enough of your relationship with Thornton to risk your marriage for it, you shouldn't mind if people know about it." "That's cruel. What's cruel is lying to your family for 8 months. What's cruel is teaching your daughters that marriage vows don't mean anything. What's cruel is making me look like an idiot while you carried on your affair in plain sight." My phone rang. I glanced at the screen and saw Joanne's name. "I need to take this," I said to Margot, then answered the call. "What's up, Joanne?" "Elliot, you need to know. Tom's been getting calls all day from people asking about Margot's situation. Word is spreading fast." I looked at Margot, who was staring at me with a mixture of fear and anger. "What kind of calls?" "Clients, suppliers, people in the industry. Apparently, the Morrison construction situation is bigger news than we expected. How so? Linda Lindell called this morning. The investigation into Thornton Blake has expanded. They found evidence of expense account fraud going back 2 years, and 3 more women have come forward with harassment complaints. What does that mean for Parish Electric? Nothing negative. In fact, Linda specifically said Morrison values our relationship and wants to continue working with us. They're more concerned about the legal liability Thornton created. After hanging up, I turned back to Margot. Your boyfriend's situation is getting worse. Morrison Construction found evidence of expense account fraud, and more harassment victims are coming forward. He's not my boyfriend anymore, she said quietly. Smart choice, a little late, but smart. Elliot, what do you want from me? I've admitted I made mistakes. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this. You can't fix this, Margot. You can't unlie to our daughters. You can't uncheat on your marriage. You can't unsteal from our family to pay for hotel rooms with your lover. So that's it? 15 years of marriage and you're just throwing it all away? I'm not throwing anything away. You already threw it away when you decided Thornton Blake was more important than your family. She stood up, anger replacing the tears. Fine. If that's how you want to play this, I'll fight you. I'll get my own lawyer. I'll fight for custody of my daughters and for half of everything we've built together. Go ahead. But you should know that Illinois is a no-fault divorce state, which means adultery can still influence asset division and custody arrangements, especially when there's documentation of deception and misuse of marital resources. You've thought of everything, haven't you? I'm thorough. It's what makes me good at my job. She stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked out of my office. I heard her moving around upstairs, presumably packing clothes. 20 minutes later, she came back downstairs with 2 suitcases. I'm staying at my sister's house, she said. When the girls get home, tell them I love them. Tell them yourself. But you should probably be honest about why you're leaving. She paused at the front door. I do love you, Elliot. I love our family. I made terrible choices, but I never stopped loving you. If that's true, I said, then you have a funny way of showing it. After she left, I sat in my office and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The house was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet than the tense silence that had characterized our home lately. My phone buzzed with a text from Jill Blake. Thornton was officially terminated today. Morrison Construction released a statement about their commitment to workplace safety and professional conduct. I texted back, "How are you holding up?" Better than I expected. It's amazing how much lighter you feel when you stop carrying someone else's lies. She was right. I'd been carrying the weight of Margot's deception without even realizing it, making excuses for her behavior, trying to convince myself that everything was normal when it clearly wasn't. Now, for the first time in months, I could breathe freely. When Becca and Lynn came home from school, I sat them down and explained that their mother had moved out temporarily while we worked through our problems. I didn't go into details about the affair, but I made it clear that the separation was serious. Both girls took it better than I'd expected. They were hurt, but they weren't surprised. Kids always know more than adults think they do. That evening, as I made dinner for the 3 of us, I realized something important. I wasn't just ending a marriage. I was reclaiming my life, my integrity, and my self-respect. Margot and Thornton had thought they could conduct their affair in secret, that they were clever enough to avoid consequences. They'd underestimated the power of truth and the importance of accountability. Now they were both facing the reality that actions have consequences, that lies eventually surface, and that betraying the people who trust you comes with a price. The circuit had finally been broken, and the current could flow in a healthier direction. 3 weeks later, the full scope of the situation became clear. Morrison Construction's investigation had uncovered a pattern of misconduct that went far beyond Thornton Blake's affair with my wife. I was in my office reviewing project schedules when Linda Lindell called with an update. Elliot, I wanted to thank you for bringing this situation to our attention. The investigation revealed problems we never would have discovered otherwise. What kind of problems? Systematic expense account fraud, harassment of multiple female employees, and abuse of his position to pressure women into relationships. We found evidence going back 5 years. 5 years? At least. Thornton was very careful about covering his tracks. But once we knew what to look for, the pattern became obvious. He targeted women who were new to the company, vulnerable, or in positions where they felt they couldn't complain. I thought about Margot, how isolated she'd become as a stay-at-home mother, how hungry she'd been for professional validation and adult conversation. How many women total? 8 that we've identified so far. Your wife wasn't the first, and she wouldn't have been the last. What's Morrison doing about it? complete overhaul of our HR policies, mandatory training for all supervisors, and a commitment to take harassment complaints seriously. We're also reviewing all of Thornton's projects to make sure there weren't any other irregularities. After hanging up, I felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction that Thornton Blake was finally facing consequences for his behavior. Sadness that it had taken the destruction of my marriage to bring his pattern of abuse to light. My phone buzzed with a text from Margot. "Can we meet for coffee? I have something important to tell you." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "My lawyer advised me not to meet with you without legal representation present. Elliot, please. This isn't about the divorce. It's about Thornton." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown where we were unlikely to run into anyone we knew. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with her hands wrapped around a coffee cup like she was trying to warm herself from the inside out. She looked thinner than before, older somehow, like the stress of the past month had aged her years. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down across from her. "What did you want to tell me?" "Thornton contacted me yesterday. He's desperate, Elliot. His wife took half his assets in the divorce. He can't find another job because word has spread through the industry, and he's facing potential legal action from some of the women he harassed." "Good. He blames you for everything. He says you destroyed his life out of spite." "I didn't destroy his life. His choices destroyed his life. I just made sure those choices had consequences." She nodded slowly. "I know that now. But Elliot, I'm worried he might try to retaliate against you or the girls." That got my attention. "What kind of retaliation?" "He's been drinking heavily, making threats. He told me he's going to sue you for defamation. But when I pointed out that everything you said was documented and true, he got angry. Started talking about how you ambushed him on the plane, how you ruined everything." "Did he threaten me specifically?" "Not directly, but he's not rational right now. He's lost his job, his marriage, his reputation. He's looking for someone to blame, and you're the obvious target." I considered this information. Desperate men sometimes did desperate things. "Have you told anyone else about this?" I called his wife, his ex-wife, to warn her. She said she'd already contacted the police because he'd been calling her at all hours, making threats. "What about you? Are you safe?" She looked surprised by my concern. "I think so. He's angry with me too, but mostly he blames you." We sat in silence for a moment. Despite everything that had happened between us, I didn't want Margot to be in danger because of her involvement with Thornton. "I'll contact the police and let them know about the potential threats," I said. "Elliot, I also wanted to apologize. Not just for the affair, but for how I handled everything afterward. I was selfish and stupid, and I hurt the people I love most." "Margot, let me finish. I've been going to counseling, trying to understand how I got to that point. The therapist helped me see that I was using the affair to avoid dealing with problems in my own life, my own insecurities. That doesn't excuse what you did. No, it doesn't. But it helps me understand it. And it helps me understand that you were right to end our marriage. I betrayed your trust in the worst possible way." I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or self-pity. Instead, I saw something I hadn't seen in months: genuine remorse. "How are you doing with the girls?" she asked. "They're adjusting. It's hard, but they're resilient." "They're angry with me." "They have a right to be angry." "I know. I'm hoping that eventually, when things settle down, we can rebuild our relationship." "That's between you and them." We talked for another few minutes, mostly about practical matters: the divorce proceedings, custody arrangements, financial settlements. It was civil, even cordial. But there was no warmth between us. Too much damage had been done. As we were preparing to leave, Margot said something that surprised me. "Elliot, I want you to know that what happened with Thornton wasn't about you. It wasn't because you were a bad husband or because our marriage was lacking something. It was about my own weaknesses, my own poor choices." "I appreciate you saying that." "I mean it. You're a good man, and you deserved better than what I gave you." After she left, I sat in my car for a while, processing the conversation. Part of me felt closure, finally understanding that the end of our marriage wasn't about my failures as a husband, but part of me felt sad for what we'd lost, for the family we'd built that was now permanently broken. That evening, I called the police and reported Thornton's potential threats. The officer I spoke with took down the information and promised to increase patrols around my house and the girls' school. "Has he made any direct threats against you or your family?" the officer asked. "Not directly, but his pattern of behavior suggests he might escalate if he feels cornered." "We'll keep an eye on the situation. In the meantime, document any contact he attempts to make, and call us immediately if you feel threatened." Over the next week, I implemented additional security measures. I had a security system installed at the house, briefed Becca and Lynn on safety protocols, and made sure Parish Electric's security was updated as well. It turned out to be unnecessary. Thornton Blake never contacted me directly, never showed up at my house or office. According to Jill, his ex-wife, he'd moved to another state to live with relatives while he tried to rebuild his life. The immediate threat was over, but the consequences of his actions continued to ripple outward. Morrison Construction settled lawsuits with 3 of the women he'd harassed. The construction industry in our city became more vigilant about harassment complaints, and several companies implemented new policies to prevent the kind of abuse of power that Thornton had perpetrated. My divorce from Margot was finalized 6 months later. I got primary custody of Becca and Lynn, along with the house and most of our assets. Margot got visitation rights and enough financial support to start over. She moved to another city, found a job with a marketing firm, and began the long process of rebuilding her relationship with our daughters. It wasn't easy. Trust, once broken, is difficult to repair, but she was making an effort. As for me, I threw myself into running Parish Electric and raising my daughters. The company continued to grow, our reputation strengthened by how we'd handled the Morrison construction situation. Tom and I developed a better working relationship, built on mutual respect rather than sibling rivalry. The girls adjusted to their new reality with the resilience that teenagers often show. They maintained a relationship with their mother, but they also understood that actions have consequences, that trust must be earned, and that integrity matters more than temporary pleasure. One evening, about a year after everything had settled, Lynn asked me a question that caught me off guard. "Dad, do you think you'll ever get married again?" I considered the question seriously. "I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe someday if I meet the right person." What would make someone the right person? Honesty, integrity, someone who understands that family comes first, always. Mom didn't understand that. No, she didn't. But that doesn't mean all people are like that. Becca, who'd been listening from the kitchen doorway, joined the conversation. "I'm glad you didn't just forgive her and pretend nothing happened," she said. "Why?" "Because it would have taught us that it's okay to lie and cheat as long as you say you're sorry afterward. You showed us that actions have consequences, even for people we love." That conversation reminded me why I'd handled the situation the way I had. It wasn't just about punishing Margot and Thornton for their betrayal. It was about demonstrating to my daughters that integrity matters, that trust is precious, and that people who violate that trust must face the consequences of their choices. The circuit had been broken, the short had been repaired, and the current was flowing cleanly again. Not the same as before. Some things, once broken, can never be fully restored, but strong enough to power whatever came next. In the electrical business, we have a saying: the best circuits are built to handle unexpected loads without failing. Life, I'd learned, works much the same way. You build your foundation on solid principles, you plan for contingencies, and when problems arise, you address them systematically and thoroughly. Margot and Thornton had created a dangerous short in the system, but by addressing it properly, documenting everything, and ensuring appropriate consequences, I'd not only protected my own interests, I'd helped prevent future victims and demonstrated to my daughters that integrity isn't just a nice ideal, it's a practical necessity for building a life worth living. The last electric man standing.